Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Devotion Wisdom, and I'm the President and CEO of Greater Louisville, Inc. Thank you for being with us today for the third installment of our DE&I event series. Inclusion plays a key role in economic growth, and this is evident now more than ever. Inclusion and prosperity for all people requires the elimination of racism. To help drive this work, GLI formed the Business Council to End Racism, led by Ralph Deschabert of Brown-Forman, Geraldine Green of Young Brands, and Cynthia Napek of Leadership Louisville Center. This council has an education work stream chaired by Dr. Nat Irvin at U of L, whom you will hear from in a few moments. One of the racial disparities we know exists in our community is the educational achievement gap. In order to have a strong workforce, in order to have an inclusive economy, we must improve student outcomes and address disparities in our educational systems. And one of the ways that we have to do this is through investment in our schools. Many of you may have seen our statement earlier this week in support of additional investment in JCPS. This is just one of the ways in the educational achievement gap. Also this week, GLI unveiled our 5-year strategic plan, which includes creation of a minority business accelerator. We must work to create wealth and build prosperity among underrepresented people. As GLI launches these dedicated strategies and resources, presentations like today's will help inform and shape our work. The youth science instructional model has a strong history of bridging the educational achievement gap. We must have intentional programs like this in order to overcome years of racism. So thank you to our friends at Knoxville Chamber of Commerce and the Knox County School District for being with us and your willingness to share your efforts to eliminate disparities, improve student access, and empower students to pursue in-demand career pathways. To the council members joining us, I look forward to our post-event discussions with the education work stream. I'd also like to our sponsors, our event and council sponsors, series supporting sponsor Morales Group Staffing, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Tops Magazine. Series event sponsor the Oliver Group, and our Business Council to End Racism sponsors Brown-Forman, Humana, and Young Brands. Lastly, thank you to our presenting sponsor, who we will hear from shortly, Papa John's International, for making the DE&I event series possible. We value your support. Now, I would like to turn it over to our education workstream leader, Dr. Nat Irvin, Assistant Dean, Thought Leadership and Civic Engagement and Practice at the University of Louisville College of Business. Dr. Irvin, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'm so glad my title is not that long.
Sarah, thank you so much, and thank you too for your leadership in this area. I'd also like to express my appreciation for the members of our community who've joined with us today for this important topic. I think about what we're discussing today, the purpose of our of this initiative that's being led by GLI and why so many of us have come together to address this. I would say that 3 things come to my mind. The first one is this, that we have a love and appreciation for education and understanding of the importance of science and the founding of our nation, the creation of our nation, and the support of our nation. So that's the first thing about science. The second thing is we're concerned about our community. We're concerned about where we are, what's happening with the future of our community, with young people especially. And I know that is exactly what drives me. And what I thought for my opening comments that I would reflect on why science is so important and why the issue that we're faced with today is so critical for the future, not only for Louisville, the surrounding areas, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, but our country. And that is this: if you think about where we were 1955, in fact, and I'm of a certain age, so that would be something that I could think about. But if you take a look at the New York Times when you get a chance and look for April 15th, you're going to see the big story about the announcement that the nation, under the leadership of Dr. Jonas Salk, had found a way to cure the infantile paralysis disease known as polio. Now, if you were a kid during that time or a parent at that time, you were worried about this disease because we didn't really know yet exactly how it was transmitted. There was concern that you would get it if you were in a swimming pool. Children were routinely told to stay indoors after school, not to go play in the playgrounds. to stay away, basically to experience something similar to what we're experiencing today. Not quite the same thing, but imagine, and we've lived with this disease for some time. Imagine the threat of a disease that could strike you at any time, and it was particularly perilous for children. Jonas Salk, of course, as you saw here, he is recognized for having solved for the vaccine. But here's the rest of the story, because that was April 15th in the New York Times. But here's another story that was January 5th in the same year for the New York Times. And you're going to see that it speaks to this unit at Tuskegee University. And that's the backstory of the vaccine, because there you're going to find that the success of the vaccine would depend on the work of 25 scientists at Tuskegee University. These are Black scientists and technologists who are going to be responsible for doing something that is absolutely critical for the success of this vaccine. They are the ones who are going to be packaging the cells from a woman who in 1951, on October 4th, actually 65 years ago, 69 years ago. Her name is Henrietta Lacks. Now, everybody kind of knows about the story about Henrietta Lacks because you know about something called the HeLa cells. Turns out that those HeLa cells from this Black woman, this woman who died at age 31, a tobacco worker, her cells were going to be the key to the success of the development of the vaccine. But the other part of it is that it was the scientists and the technologists at Tuskegee University who produced the 60,000 vials of vaccine, excuse me, of HeLa cells that would be tested around the country that would prove the viability for the success of the polio vaccine. Now, you know, the the scientists that were at the Tuskegee University, I say most of us don't know the name Dr. Weaver, Dr. Bynum. We don't know those names, but we should as a nation. And we should also know the importance of why young people need to be able to see that they can make contributions in the world of science. And I think today, when we have our guests from Knoxville, whom I had a chance to visit with a couple of days ago, I know what they're going to say is going to be important for all of us. But I hope that we can put this in context of understanding that the success of our nation, the success of our community will be if we can continue to invigorate all of our community, and especially our children, for a love for science. Not Science is, it is the fundamental aspect of our humanity. And I think that notion of curiosity, of learning and solving the problem. We don't have an economy if we don't have a love for scientists. And if we don't have good science, we simply don't have a great nation. And I think that's why I'm so excited about our initial today with youth science. And so let me turn it over now to our other colleague from who's going to speak, who's going to help bring just some reflections as well. And that's Victoria Russell, who's the Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and one of the presenting sponsors from Papa John's. And Victoria, we've known each other, and thank you so much for doing this today. I know your insights are important, especially on today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Papa John's has been on its diversity, equity, and inclusion journey for more than 2 years. It's so important to the success of our business that we've made creating a culture of leaders who believe in diversity, inclusivity, and winning the #1 strategic priority for the company. As the fight for racial justice continues in our communities and in our country, we aspire to create the kind of culture in our company we'd like to see in the rest of the world, and a culture we can be proud of. Today, we have education and business leaders from to share their partnership on utilizing the youth science instructional model to further the STEM programs within their public school district, and how these efforts support Black and underrepresented students and the role of the business community. To lead us in the discussion, we have Christy Seals, College and Career Specialist, along with Dr. Keith Wilson, Director of Career and Technical Education from Knox County Schools, and Amy Nolan, VP of Regional Enhancement of the Knoxville Chamber. After their overview presentation, Dr. Irving will help moderate some discussion questions before we open up to the audience for Q&A. Christy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm actually going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Keith Wilson.
want to say, first of all, thank you for inviting us to take part in this session today. It certainly sounds like from the introduction that a lot of the things that are near and dear to and the motivation of the work that you guys are doing in Jefferson County and in Louisville are very close to some of the things that we're working on as well. And so we're excited, hopefully today, that we can share some insight into how we're looking at our work and how that might help you guys think through some of the initiatives that you all are using as well. So to get started, just to give you sort of a brief agenda for today, first I'm going to talk through a little bit about just Knox County Schools and kind of who we are, and then the career and technical education work and where it fits into what we're doing in Knox County Schools and the strategic goals that we have, and give just a brief overview of kind of what U-Science is and why we chose to go in that direction of using that program and that platform. And then I'm going to turn it over to Amy Nolan, who was just introduced, and she's going to talk about the work and the partnership that we have and how the Knoxville Chamber works to support the schools and several local initiatives, both in Knoxville and at the state level, important to really our work to support our diverse student population. And then lastly, Christy Seals, who I'm very fortunate to have on my team, working as a college and career specialist, is going to talk more specifically about U-Science and share some of the information and details about what actually becomes available for students and for business partners and all of the ways we can use that data and information that comes out of that platform. So in particular for me, with my goals, again, I want to tell you a little bit about the schools. I want you guys hopefully to walk away with this understanding for how my department, the Career and Technical Education Department, fits into the larger goals we have as a district. And we've already heard about again, this focus on science and STEM, and certainly those are programs that fall into the category that I work with. And as a former middle school science teacher, Dr. Irvin gets me a little bit excited when he starts talking about those drivers because that's, again, stuff that's near and dear to my heart. But also, you know, we wide range of programming from not only just our STEM fields, but our manufacturing and the trades, health sciences, all of these different categories that we think about when we think of vocational ed previously, but career and technical. And then lastly, I want to show you a little bit about why U-Science for us and how we're using that to address gaps in our post-secondary readiness when we look at our student population here in the county. So a little bit about who we are. In the Knox County Schools, we serve the greater Knoxville metropolitan area. There is no city school system here, so we're talking about the greater county area. We have 88 schools, 50 elementary, 16 middle, 16 high schools, and then 6 special schools, a variety of a couple of alternative schools for behavioral purposes, and then some diagnostic and special ed campuses. When you look at Knox County as a school system, we're a very diverse set of communities, quite honestly, within the county. And so when you talk about urban schools or rural, we have all of those schools as part of the school community here in Knox County. And each of those sort of has its own flavor and its own feel. So a lot of times when we're talking about students, we still have a high degree of I would say, isolation of certain populations in our district. We have high concentrations of poverty, high concentration of students of color in specific schools, just again based on those communities and who's lived in those over time. So again, it's a very diverse group of communities that make up our school district, and certainly that fits into how we have to think about programming and how we have to think about increasing our work in certain populations. To give you a little perspective on that, when we think about the geographic spread of our community, the buses that serve our schools cover about 526 square miles a day for the Knoxville region. About 8,000 employees, 5,000 of those are teachers, and our operating last year was $504 million. We're currently sitting at about 58,000 students, which is actually, I think, due to the COVID situation this year, that has us down currently about 1,600 students from where we were last year. Probably some that have chosen more homeschool routes and things like that. Certainly, that's a little bit off from where we typically find ourselves, and you can see a little more about our demographic information there on the slide. We are predominantly, you see a majority, 69.9% white students, but we have drastically increasing Hispanic and Latino population that has been going up for about the last 10 years. And then our Black African American at 16.7. Economically disadvantaged, about 27.6%. We have over 90 different dialects and languages spoken by students in our district, and that 4.8% that are English language learners, and 13.7% of our students would be students that have some type of disability, which they were. And we strive to fulfill our mission. So our mission statement, if you look at our strategic plan, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our strategic plan, is to provide excellent and accessible learning opportunities that empower all students to reach their full potential. And so as I talk a little bit about CTE and where we fit into that, the importance of how we program and how we offer programming in the schools, especially in CTE, is a major step into ensuring that that accessibility piece is there. As I've said, with the variety of communities we have, 16 high schools spread across that wide geographic spread, we have to work very hard to ensure that no matter where you go to high school, you're going to have opportunities that are relevant, that are of high value, that are going to allow you to develop the skills necessary to be successful. And so that's really a big piece for CTE and how we look at our programming. Our strategic plan includes basically three big buckets, if you will, that our goals are. Shouldn't be surprising. The first one is to increase student achievement and to, again, promote growth and academic success for all students. We have to address all parties. The second one is to eliminate disparities in our academic achievement and in our discipline data. And we've kind of gone through a multi-year process that's, I would say, changed in focus over time with different leadership, but a continued renewed focus on ensuring that we're closing those gaps for our students and that we're, as educators, addressing the needs of students that come from diverse backgrounds. And then lastly, creating a positive culture among both our staff and our stakeholders, as well as our students. We want the school district to be a place that people want to work and a place where everybody can learn. So I'm going to look at, again, this idea of where does the career and technical ed work fit in more focused with the district's improvement plan, the strategic goals. And again, when you think of increasing student achievement, obviously literacy and numeracy goals, as every school district across the country does. And we know that those foundational skills are going to be important to students no matter where they end up in life. And so that's certainly part of what, as a district, we look at. But the few years back, I think we're in our third year now, the state actually made a pretty significant shift in how they looked at students' readiness for college and career. And they did that by creating an indicator known as the Ready Graduate Indicator. I don't know if this is true for schools there in Jefferson County, but as we've looked over time, we've done a very good job, I think, of promoting the ACT and thinking about the four-year college track for students. And so that has really become the benchmark, and it still is a benchmark for whether or not students are going to be ready to move on after high school. And so we've always sort of measured that through that composite score of a 21 that would suggest a student was ready to be successful in those freshman level college courses. And then also now we recognize that through the SAT, although do take the ACT for in-state schools. But the state moved beyond that by adding some additional measures that if a student met them, they would then designate them as, again, a ready graduate. And so one of the other ways is to complete 4 early post-secondary opportunities. And so you may be familiar with dual enrollment courses where a student's taking a class for high school and college credit at the same time, or advanced placement, AP coursework. That's another way that students may do that. We have one international baccalaureate school, an IB high school. IB coursework can be an EPSO that counts for those students. And then also Cambridge is another model that we don't currently have, but we have 2 schools this year that are going to be exploring that as a new advanced academic model for their schools. So students can engage in those courses. And again, as we think about programming across the district, we have asked and we are pushing to where every school has a catalog available of those early post-secondary opportunities to ensure that all kids have the opportunity to engage in meaningful early post-secondary work. So we've got ACT, we've got college coursework while in high school. Other ways, and one that's really particularly important to us, is the industry certification route. So the state has done quite a bit of work with their advisory councils at the state level to identify industry certifications that are, again, of high value to students, that align to the needs of employers in the state. And they have then aligned those to the programs of study that fall within CTE. So whether you're a student who's studying welding, or you're studying STEM engineering or STEM technology, there are industry certifications that you can earn while enrolled in those programs. And then taking those beyond graduation, they may count as college credit when you enroll at a university. They may also be recognized on a resume if you're walking straight into a career placement, and again, add value to what that student is taking away from their high school career. And so students who are earning industry certifications, again, also participating in some combination of or advanced placement coursework, can also demonstrate readiness for post-secondary through that route. And then lastly, very similarly, we use the ASVAB score, which, if you're not familiar, is a military skills assessment that the 3 branches of the military use to determine potential job placement within the military. And that's a skills assessment as well that gives some college and career and interest survey feedback to students that they can use in making decisions as they move forward. So again, Ready Graduate's a big piece that we have used to motivate and to kind of push our work forward in CTE. For eliminating disparities, a lot of that has focused in on student supports, quite honestly, and a lot of staff training. So PBIS, how we build systems that are less punitive and more rewarding for restructuring behavioral problems, rather than again, kind of going back to the same punishments of suspension and and in-school suspension, things that really are pulling kids out of the classroom time. And so we've got new methods and structures that have been put in place in a lot of our schools to address with some of the behavioral issues that we face. Cultural competency training is something that over the past several years, all staff in the district have gone through to, again, understand the differences that come with teaching a diverse population, especially if you're coming, if you're a Caucasian majority population teacher who maybe doesn't have that background. It gives you a different perspective on exactly how to work with students of color and of poverty. Those are major indicators that are major things that we have to address. The ACEs training is another one that's been very commonly incorporated, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And so ACEs is a program that teaches about working with students who have grown up in situations where they've experienced trauma, and then how that shapes their educational outcomes and their interactions in the future. It's been meaningful training as we think about addressing students that come from a diverse set of backgrounds. Minority staff recruitment is another one. Currently, I think we are actually in the market for refilling our minority recruiter position because our last one took a job with Harvard University, so that was a good promotion for her. But I think we're in the market right now for trying to refill that. But also other efforts that we're doing. We've partnered with the University of Tennessee Knoxville for a Grow Your Own program, which will allow us to take some of our teaching assistants in some of our more urban schools and create pathways for them to continue their education and actually earn their teaching license and work in those schools there in those communities where they're already working. Narrowing achievement gaps for minority populations, whether we're talking Black, Hispanic, Native American, our students with disabilities, or those that are economically disadvantaged. Again, looking at those populations of our students in particular, and strategies that we're across the district for addressing those achievement gaps are big pieces. And the last one, again, I highlight this one a little bit differently for CTE and around our work that I'm getting ready to talk about, is improving student access. So I talked about Ready Graduate. We're trying to be focused on increasing the percent of graduates who have participated in at least one of those advanced academic courses I mentioned, IB, dual enrollment, or earn a national industry certification. And so those are specific goals we've set and metrics that we have included in our strategic goals. So when you look at all of that together and you think about the size of our district, the geographic spread, the types of schools that we serve, where our populations of students that are typically underserved are housed in specific schools and campuses, and we look at how we need to approach that as a district. If we in Knox County are going to ensure that all students are going to have the opportunities to develop those academic and technical skills that successful at the next level. The biggest and best way I believe that we can address, and where we're working to address, is to ensure that we have equity and relevance in the programs that are available in all of our schools. Over time, we have had schools that have had much stronger academic offerings, much stronger technical offerings in their schools, and we've had schools that have had barely any. And so we've had an opportunity gap, if you will, in some of our high school campuses that we've got to address over time through programming. And one way we do that through programming is having a better understanding of who these students are. And that's really where U-Science has come into it for us. So when you think about, again, if we're going to get to that equity and relevance, if we're going to meet all kids' needs, first, our students and our families, they have to understand what the opportunities are. What are the opportunities that exist in my community and at the post-secondary level? And then what's a good fit for me? How do my strengths and interests align to that opportunity or to those opportunities? And then for our teachers, our counselors, they've got to understand the students that they serve on a deeper level and know how to best then match them with these opportunities as they're thinking about which programs to plug them into, which academic opportunities, which CTE opportunities, because we want to ensure, again, all kids have access to these high value programs, and that we're helping to steer them in ways, because of the data we have on these students, towards things that will match their personalities and their strengths, and those that will offer them economic independence in the future. So that comes down to better data. That's the way I would capture that. And so U-Science is a platform. There are lots of things out there, and I know probably at some point in your education or in your background, you probably took an interest inventory that told you should be, a dog walker or something like that, because you liked animals. Well, this has a component to it that talks about student interest, and as students are participating in the platform, they fill out interest data back on that. But more importantly is it also measures the students' aptitudes. And so this is like 50-year-old research. Much of what is the U-Science platform and these assessments are based in are the same things that have been used by ASVAB for many years. And coming out of that, what it does is it really pinpoints for a student. Yes, you may be interested in these 3 careers, but you're also highly aligned in terms of your skill sets and the way you think and where you're kind of hardwired for these other careers. And so what it does is it gives a student a full picture of kind of what might be a good fit for me. There are different versions of this assessment for middle school students and high school students, and we're currently using them at both levels. And honestly, last year was our very first year with implementation of this. So last year, our 8th grade students in Knox County and our 9th grade students participated in the platform, and we had just over 9,000 students complete the assessment. I think we had about 1,500 that started that didn't finish to do this year, but we felt like out of the gate that was a great first effort with that. So what do we know now? Well, again, for the students, that platform that they participate in, it's about a 90-minute assessment that they complete. What it does is it generates a profile for them. And so they can look into that and look into the data, and it will show them what's the best fit for me. What am I most interested in? Where do my aptitudes and my strengths align to in terms of careers that I might want to pursue? And students can use that profile to further prompt research that they want to do, to look into post-secondary institutions that may offer programs aligned to those careers. And it also gives them additional content in there that might help them in support of developing resumes. So it also gives them language to talk about themselves that again highlights those strengths that are natural to them. It shows them where they may be a strong team member, their style when they work as a team member, what strengths they have, maybe they're a great communicator. It starts to pull out for those kids in those aptitude assessments that could, again, steer some decision making and highlight for them something they may have never thought about. One of the things, and Christy may talk a little more about that in a minute, that can come out of this for a student is really this gap in exposure, because it's really hard for me to be interested in a career that I know anything about. So again, to go back to Dr. Irvin's example, if I don't know what an engineer does, if I don't know what it looks like to work in a science lab, it's going to be really hard for me to express interest in doing that when I grow up. But what this assessment can do is it can draw out, based on those aptitudes, hey, this may be a great fit for you. You may be a really great candidate for a STEM program, but that kid may have never thought about that without that assessment. And so it is important, again, that we have this data. And as we move to thinking about the school personnel, what's important next is what we do with that data. So as the kid sees these gaps and they see these interests, now we have data reporting at the school level that allows us to do some additional things. So for our school personnel, and let me tell you, as a career and technical ed director, I learned very quickly how important our school counselors are in this work. And again, you have to understand, as educators, you guys are looking at things through the economic and workforce development lens. As educators, we're not trained that way. That's a whole different language for us to think through. And so when we think about the impact of getting kids matched up with the right work, with the right CTE program, the right academic program, and on that right track, that this is stuff that we haven't always thought about through that lens of economic opportunity. And so with U-Science, not only does the kid get a profile, but it allows the school to get these school level reports where they can really get like a landscape view of all the student body. And so as a counselor, they can use that for making scheduling or advisement decisions for the students. Again, as I mentioned, that gap, they can look into that student result and say, well, they show some strength here for a STEM program and we have one. I wonder if they've ever thought about to try that program out and start to expose them to those things that maybe they've never been exposed to. The other thing is, as partnerships develop with business partners on the outside, maybe they have work-based learning experiences that they want to offer. Maybe they have internship activities. It gives us data that we can use to identify kids that are the best fit or the best opportunity for that, who get, again, maybe students that we would overlook at other times. So it's a data point that we can use to better match up those activities. For our administrators, we want them to have this kind of data when they start to look at shifting CTE programs. So for a long time, and our principals have a lot of control in our district currently on how they decide on which CTE programs they have. And for a long time, you know, we've made program decisions based on maybe we like Miss Smith and she's done the prom for us for 25 years. And so we can't let her go, but the program she's teaching may have no value to our kids or to. And so we can't make decisions based on things like that anymore. And so we want to really know, do you have the student population with the interest, with the strength to carry a program like this? And then do we have a workforce demand that says a program like this is valuable to kids in our community? We've got to have that type of data to make decisions. We have to, again, thinking about where we're pushing all of our schools to be, ensure that every student in our district is enrolled in an academic and technical program that leads them to those relevant episodes. So again, I may be a kid whose ACT score right now won't allow me to enroll in a dual enrollment class. Maybe I can't hit that 17 on the ACT, but I can take a class and get an industry certification, or I can do a dual credit class. So as a counselor, as an administrator, I need to be looking at every student in my building and saying, how do I get them engaged as early as possible in this next level work that shows them some success, that shows them they can do it, and helps to get them on track to earning those credits for the next level. And then I have to own some of those partnerships with my community and with the businesses around me. And it gives me a chance with this data to communicate much better about who my kids are and what types of needs we have as educators and as a school community. And then lastly, and hopefully this resonates with some of you guys, and I kind of picked up from the first conversation, again, I think our communities are very similar in that our business community is very interested in how do they get in and interact and help the schools. But sometimes I think they don't really know how to do that. Like they don't know what's the best foot forward in engaging with the school district. And so again, data helps us to clarify that a little bit. If we can talk more clearly about what our students are interested in and where they have strengths, then we can use that data to really leverage partnerships that are not only more effective, but mutually beneficial, good for our kids and good for your business. It allows our external partners to work to identify, specific students. And so I'm not just coming in and talking to the 200, but I might just come in and talk to 25 of those kids because I know those are the ones strategically that I really need to be recruiting for my opportunity. And then lastly, and I think as we move into thinking about our partnership with the chamber, and Amy's going to speak, to begin into as we get more and more data from our student body, how do we use that data as a recruitment tool for businesses who could come into our community? We have heard from our chamber of friends multiple times, when they start to court other businesses to come into the area, that they want to know, where are my workers going to come from? Well, as a high school, as a secondary level, we're part of that production, right? If we've got programs that are generating students with aptitude and interest, and we've got post-secondary programs that we can feed them into as quickly as possible through these episodes and through these relationships we have with them, then we're creating that pipeline that can be something that can be used to recruit new businesses into our community. And so again, data to do that. So I'm going to turn that over now to talk a little bit about that partnership and that work to Amy Nolan from the Chamber.
Right. Thank you all. I appreciate being here. First, I just want to tell you what I'm going to do today, tell you about the Knoxville Chamber, tell you a little bit how we support workforce development, specifically Keith's work and Christy's work in Knox County Schools, and tell you a little bit how we've changed throughout the years and where we stand now. So we, of course, are a regional chamber, much like Louisville. And we start like most of you all, very strong, looking back over 10 years ago, very strong proponents of Common Core, teacher accountability, evaluation, all those issues, which really put us at odds a lot with our school leadership, mostly our elected leadership. As that died down, we really focused in with new staff on both sides to doing some relationship building. And so what we ended up with then was they would ask and we would deliver. We need 2 companies for this event. Can you help us with this career fair at this middle school? Can you help us with this and that? And so we've really tried to look now, how do we get away from programs more into strategies? And so, like you all, we just adopted a 5-year strategic plan. Our goal in that plan is to develop a workforce development strategy. We have a survey that will be deployed by the end of next week. And so we're really trying to dig deep ourselves into strategies, to examine what our programs are doing and what's the impact. We also tended to do tons of events. So we had, educators in the workplace, for example, which was by numbers a great event. We would have hundreds of teachers take tours of all kinds of businesses, and they get some professional development credit. Well, the thing is that a lot of kindergarten, elementary teachers, it filled a need, but was it impactful for what they were delivering in the classroom, or was it impactful for our businesses in terms of developing their pipeline? And the answer is no, it really isn't. So we're working with Keith and others in the school system to try to stop doing what's not impactful and really look at what is impactful. So, for example, one thing that we found that's beneficial is to take some of Keith's teachers in CTE and drop them into companies for 2 to 3 days. A really immersive experience where they learn what they're teaching, what's the state-of-the-art equipment, state-of-the-art methods, and not only that, but create a deeper relationship with that employer. College and career readiness is absolutely just as much a focus of the business community as it is with the school system. And part of the business case with U Science is that attending college in Tennessee, we emphasis on the kids should attend college. We call that the drive to 55, that 55% of our students should have a college degree, or we tried to reframe that, some type of post-secondary training. And that would include an industry certification in that. We spend a lot of money as a state sending kids to college. Tennessee Promise, free technical college, community college, UT Promise, free tuition for anybody under 50, whose households make less than 50,000 at the University of Tennessee, and Tennessee Reconnect, which is adult learners. What we have found, however, is our community college and TCAT, all our completion rates are not nearly where they need to be. hear stories from employers that they get nurses that have never known how to draw blood. We hear from parents that kids went through 3 years of school and then they switched their major. And we have many students, probably our highest two degrees in degree count for four-year colleges are in psychology and political science. So there's a real business case for us to make that college experience much more meaningful and have that lead to a meaningful career. And I think that's where really youth science plays a huge role, because a barrier for many of these students is that you can't be what you can't see. And so as we're working with the CTE folks, probably, I don't know, a year, 2 years ago, talking about programming in different schools. Well, healthcare is always the most popular because kids know what a doctor is and what a nurse is. But do they know what a coder is? Do they know what an industrial electrician is? Or somebody that's working in advanced manufacturing? And they probably don't have that exposure. So that's why we feel youth science is very important. Now, we did not, as it happens, we were actually coming at youth science from two different directions. We had a very aggressive business development person, I think, in our state who was meeting with folks all over the state. This was a statewide issue, really concerned about getting kids some more aptitude tests. We had a free product called College for TN. We played with several of them. We had a state organization let out a contract from exploratory. I bet you I probably took 4 or 5 aptitude assessment tests in that period. And just anecdotally, youth science really was the one that I felt described my career and my aptitude and assessment very accurately, with a lot of detail and a lot of career guidance as far as what are on ramps for education and what are off ramps. So whether 1 year education, you could do this 2 years, 3, 4 years on, whether he would be a fellow at Oak Ridge National Lab. So we really like the product, and it just happened that Knox County, school said, "Hey, we think we're going to use this," and we said, "That's a great idea. What can we do to support you?" So finally, like you, we are looking at disparities in our community. Even though we have a ton to brag about in Knoxville, we have a very high rate of poverty among our African American community, among the highest of the metro areas in the state. So we are really looking at that very strategically. We think youth science is a big part of that. And as Keith mentioned, youth science yields meaningful data for the teacher students, but then it also makes that engagement much more meaningful and that investment of their time and treasure meaningful for employers. Because when we tell them, "Oh, you're going to speak to 200 kids," like he said, that's not their talent pipeline. If they're going to invest their time and treasure, they want that narrowed down to the students that are going to have at least some kind of interest, some kind of aptitude for a career in that field. So Career Expo, which used to, I hate to say this, but I've called it before. My friends at the school system will cringe, but I call it, used to be what I call trick or treat. It was an after school event. All the companies brought their little, flashlights and Post-it notes, and I just got a bag full of stuff. Using the youth science data, we are going to use that, have a virtual option, but we're really going to be able to divvy kids up and put them with employers that have information to give them that will be much more meaningful for them. CTE externships, I think the same way. And then I call it draft day. It might be sign-in day. This is kind of in development, but we're looking to even go one step further and have a virtual event where we invite all kinds of employers. We talk about all the opportunities that there are in the school system for them to engage, whether it's just to be a guest speaker once, sit on an advisory board, offer an internship, so we can make that match. And so our staff can do the more strategic stuff versus just serving as kind of a industry recruiter for the school system. To go into that workforce strategy, I mentioned that survey. We also host what we're calling a Pathways Partners Roundtable. That's the leaders of all the education institutions in our area. We're hosting them quarterly to talk about how they're working together to create pathways. We actually had this group in our building for another type of event, and I think they all noticed, and we noticed, that just through informal conversation, they learn things about each other. High school that started an aviation program, and a woman at the community college said, "Oh, we're doing this, and this is how that'll work together." So we're providing that opportunity to bring them together so they can share information, and then we can share information from our talent council. And I'm sure you all have a talent council, workforce committee, whatever you call it, and that's probably 25 to 30 employers from our area, very diverse employer base, and they'll be guiding our efforts in this arena. And now I think I'm going to turn it back over to Christy.
Thank you, Amy. At this time, we're going to pause and take questions from the audience.
I think while we're waiting on that, I'll go ahead and ask the first question. Can you hear me okay, guys?
Yes.
Okay, and first of all, thank you all so much for sharing your story from Knoxville. I just had a brief question would be, can you give me a sense of how the Black community has responded in general to this initiative? However you would like to frame it. What has been the response from Black educators, Black parents? Christy spoke about the huge the poverty, the challenges that our community similarly faces. But what has been the response so far to this initiative?
I'll go ahead and say parents have been overwhelmingly, their comments are, where was this whenever I was in high school? Why this opportunity to dive in and figure out what career or what college was best for me? So they are having an aha moment, and it is leading to guided discussions with their students. And as we think about students, once they complete the exercises and we have that buy-in from teachers and administrators and counselors, they're truly able to see the results, and the results is what grabs their attention in using the profile, which is interactive like a social media platform, to engage those students. And they can save, and they have the profile even after they graduate from high school.
Thank you, Christy. Keith, you got something?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned before, I wish we were further along in this process in doing it. I think, we celebrated, as I said earlier, really having a high level of student engagement in last year. And we I think as an example, Christy, I think about South Dole Middle and some of the work they did last year with really getting parents involved and engaged from the community with the results and bringing them in and doing some things. But there's a degree of work to be done, I think, in that regard. We think about engaging in that next level of activity as we will get more and more kids with data in that system. It's then about what you're doing with that data. And so we've got a lot of aspirations, I think, about where we want to get to with it. And there's still just a lot to be done still in that range.
How would you assess the importance of, and this is obviously this is a loaded question, I guess I'd say, but how important do you think it is for the representation, meaning like Black teachers, administrators, just the presence of science? Because as you know, and I think you and I share a kindred spirit on this, science is not abstract. It is embodied in people. I mean, we are the scientists, right?
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about what have you done in that area to try to, and how successful have you been in that area of trying to represent what science is in the context of the people that are part of the team?
Right. So I'll tell you, as far as STEM and as a field in general, it's very broad in our district. So when you look at science and mathematics, those are separate departments. When you look at mine, within ours, I like to say when you get into CTE and then you get into science, we're really on those tracks of like looking at pre-engineering and pre-robotics and that sort of stuff. But in that respect, I think, I wouldn't make science any different, I guess, really than anything else. We know we've got some issues in terms of making sure that our students see adults in the building with the credentials, with the know-how, with the level of that are there and are speaking from that authority on things like our knowledge bases in science and mathematics and in our career fields. I mean, really and truly, I mean, that's a big struggle point in CTE is finding just the qualified professional who largely is leaving a profession where they make more money to come back to be a teacher. We struggle with that just at the beginning. And so, we wish we had large pools of folks to draw upon, I think sometimes, but when with certain areas, we're looking at 1 to 2 applicants for a job and we're kind of taking what we have. And honestly, the teacher shortage, we're filling that, which is why we've moved to more of those grow your own programs. Now, I will say this, another program that falls under my programs in career and technical education is the education and training track for teachers. So it's called Teaching as a Profession is the program you'll study. And in a couple of our urban schools right now where we're looking at really building upon we have with UTK, the next layer of that is to really start to speak to and engage with our students in those schools and really have that honest conversation. There's not a lot of teachers and leaders in these schools that look like you. So what can you do to help work towards that? And get them engaged and fired up about a career in education where they could go learn at a university and bring back into their community again that representation from the community.
I know that we don't have long, and Sydney, I know you're watching the chat board, so if there's some question that we could bring up, because I have one other, and again, I'm so grateful for you all, sharing with you the struggle that you're having, the challenges you're having, as we all are. Talk if you're going to summarize in just briefly 2 or 3 minutes about when somebody thinks about you science, what is it that they are actually thinking about? What is it that we'll say Knoxville when science, what is the major thrust that you want to say happen over the next 3 to 5 years?
Right. Well, I think from a big picture standpoint, what we hope it does, and I mentioned that in my presentation there, I think it gives us better information about our students and about where we're not really maybe looking at students through the right lens sometimes on who is the right fit for this science program, for this nursing program, for whatever. And it lets us not, I think when we start to use data to make our decisions rather than maybe some of the old practices we've used, it changes the landscape about what kids have access to what programs and what opportunities. And then I'll flip that to the other side as I have been in the CTE seat for about 3 years, a little over 3 years now. From an economic and workforce standpoint, we are an important role player in that. And I think it is part of our responsibility to ensure that we position ourselves correctly secondary partners, with our business and industry partners, with our local government and representatives, so that we are speaking and advocating for our kids and using our dollars in wise ways to make sure that the programs we put in front of them and how we allow them to access those programs really in the long term build up our community in an economic way. And that's been stuff I've had to learn. They didn't train me in teaching school on that stuff. That's a whole other language. So
yeah, no, I know that's been. Amy, you were going to say something, I think.
Yes, I was going to say, I take train Keith on that. I'll take the credit.
She absolutely did.
Okay.
But anyway, if you ask me what I would like to see 3 to 5 years,
Yeah.
I would like us to see a wealth of information technology professionals.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see, a wealth of advanced manufacturing. I would like to see our poverty rate in the African American community drop to nearly zero, because all the professions that are available, they know that it's within their possibilities to attain those professionals. So I think professions, I think you could have that kind. Our employers could fill the jobs they need to fill, and our students in our community will have meaningful, well-paid careers.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I think that we're running close to time. And I think at this point, first of all, I want to thank you, and I want to turn it over to Sarah, who I think will have some comments and closing comments. But just I want to express just on behalf of the University of Louisville and our community, thank you all for sharing your insights today. Sarah, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Amy, Keith, Christy, and thanks to you, Nat, as well. We appreciate everyone joining us today. One more time, our sponsors, Papa John's International, Brown-Forman, Humana, Yum Brands, the Oliver Group, the Morales Group Staffing, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Tops Magazine. This really is important work, and GLI is all in on making significant strides to address equity issues and supporting minority businesses and talent. Our next conversation on racial inequity in business will focus on criminal justice reform and law enforcement, and will be held on September 22nd from 9:30 to 10:30. Please go to www.greaterlouisville.com for more information on our speaker for that session. Now, we do have our Business Council to End Racism work stream that is convening in 15 minutes. So please enjoy this 15-minute break, and then we will come back and discuss more of what we just heard. I can't thank you enough to Knox County Schools for being with us today. It's been exciting to hear about your work. Look forward to seeing some of what we need accomplished in the next 3 to 5 years materialize, and you can come back and tell us all about that success. So thank you again for being with us today.